here's the reality. If you can use a mouse, you can design in Figma. And in the next few minutes here, I'm going to show you exactly how. So design used to feel complicated. You had to download heavy software, you had to learn confusing tools, and then figure everything out on your own. And now it's browser-based, it's fully collaborative and powered by AI. And Figma sits right at the center of that shift. And that's why in 2026, everyone seems to be using it. Startups build their products in Figma, agencies run client projects on it, developers rely on it for handoff, even product managers jump inside daily. It's no longer just a design tool, it's where product ideas actually take shape. But here's what usually happens to beginners. They open up Figma, they see that blank canvas, and then they close it. But not today, because in this tutorial, we're starting from zero. No design degree, no complicated theory, no fluff, so that by the end of the video, you'll understand the interface, you'll build your first real design, use components and auto layout. We'll explore Figma's AI tools and know how to share your work properly. And yes, we're building something real here together. I added a link to Figma in the description down below so you can open it and build one with me. So let's get started. All right, so let's start with the basics here. The first step is creating your free Figma account. Go to figma.com and click on Get Started for free. You can sign up using your Google account or with your own email. The process is quick and you don't need to enter any credit card information to begin. Now, this is where many beginners start to overthink things. Do you need a paid plan to follow along with this tutorial? The short answer here is no. The free plan is more than enough to get started. It gives you unlimited draft files, access to all of the core design tools, and basic collaboration features. And that's everything you need to learn the platform and build real projects. Now, paid plans are mainly for teams. They unlock shared libraries, more advanced permissions, and additional dev mode features for developers. If you are learning on your own or you're working on personal projects, the free plan will work perfectly. So here is something else that makes Figma different from traditional design tools. It runs entirely in your browser. There is no heavy software to download and no complicated installation process. You can open it and start designing immediately. Figma also offers a desktop application. Some people prefer it because it feels slightly faster and reduces browser clutter. However, functionally, it is almost identical to the browser version, so you can choose whichever feels more comfortable and you will not be missing out on any major features. So once you have signed up and you've opened up Figma, you're just ready to go. And when you log in for the first time, you will land on your dashboard. At a glance, it looks simple and clean, but there is structure behind it. And understanding that structure early will save you a lot of confusion later on. So before we start designing anything, let's just quickly look at how this workspace is organized. Here is your Figma home base. And when you log in, you will land on this dashboard. And again, at first glance, it looks very simple, almost minimal even. But there is a clear structure behind it, and understanding that structure early on will make everything much easier as you continue working. At the top here, you will see sections like recents, drafts, and team projects. Recents will give you quick access to the files you have opened recently. It helps you jump back into your latest work without searching for it. Drafts are your personal workspace. You can think of this as your private design area. Any file you create inside drafts is only visible to you unless you choose to share it. And this is where most beginners should start because it allows you to experiment freely without worrying about anyone else seeing your work. Team projects are designed for collaboration. Inside a team, you create projects. Inside those projects, you create files. The structure works like folders inside folders. And once you understand that hierarchy, organizing your work becomes a lot more straightforward. So now let's look at the different types of files that you can create in Figma. And you will see options such as design, FigJam, slides, buzz, site, and make. Design files are used for creating user interfaces and layouts. And this is where you design websites, mobile apps, dashboards, and other visual products. FigJam is Figma's brainstorming tool that allows you to create whiteboards, add sticky notes, map user flows, and organize ideas visually. Slides let you build presentations directly inside of Figma. And many beginners are actually surprised by this feature. It allows you to design and present without switching to another tool. And the other file types expand into more advanced workflows. But for this tutorial, we're just going to focus on design files. And in just a moment, we're going to open your first design file. And once you do understand how this workspace is all structured, that blank canvas will not feel overwhelming anymore. So now let's go ahead and create something real, yeah? So opening up a new design file can feel overwhelming at first. There's a large blank canvas in the middle, panels on both sides, and then a toolbar filled with icons that are not immediately obvious. And that reaction is completely normal. The key is realizing that you only need a small portion of these tools to get started. And the first thing to get comfortable with is navigation. So if moving around the canvas feels easy, everything else really does become less intimidating. So hold the space bar and click to drag the canvas in any direction. Use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out, or press Command or Control with the plus or minus keys. And once you understand that you control the view, the empty space stops feeling overwhelming and actually starts feeling pretty flexible. So at the top of the screen here, you will find the main toolbar. And these are the tools you will use most often. The Move tool lets you select and reposition elements. The Frame tool creates artboards, which act as screens for websites, mobile apps, or dashboards. The Shape tool here allows you to draw rectangles and circles and lines, and the Text tool lets you add and edit content. The Pen tool is there for custom paths and more detailed shapes. And while there are additional options available, these few tools handle most beginner workflows. So on the left side here, you're going to notice and see the Layers panel. Every object you create appears there automatically. So as your design grows, this panel becomes more important. Keeping layers organized and renaming them clearly makes your files easier to manage and edit later on. So small habits here prevent big confusion later on. And over here on the right side, you will find the Properties panel. So this is where styling happens, and when you select an object, the panel updates to show its settings. You can adjust size, position, alignment, color, border, shadows, and other effects from this area. Almost every visual change you make will happen here. And once you understand navigation, the toolbar, the Layers panel, and the Properties panel, the interface won't feel chaotic anymore. And now that the layout of the tool makes sense, it's time to actually build something with it. So let's start by creating a frame. Press F, then click and drag on the canvas, and now you've just created your first artboard. In Figma, frames act as your screens. If you are designing a website, the frame represents a page. If you're designing a mobile app, it represents a screen. And if you are building, say, a dashboard, it represents that layout. So everything lives inside of frames. So next, let's add a simple shape. Press R to select the rectangle tool, then click and drag inside your frame. And just like that, you've created your first element. So with the rectangle selected, look over to the Properties panel here on the right. Under Fill, choose any color you like, and the moment you click a new color, the change appears instantly on the canvas. And that real-time feedback is one of the reasons designers enjoy working in Figma. You experiment and you'll see results immediately. So now add some text. Press T, click inside your frame, and type something simple like "My first design." With the text selected, adjust the font size, make it bold, and move it into position. And you can drag it freely or use alignment tools if you prefer more precision. And at this point, everything is already straightforward. And that is because, well, it is. However, this is also where beginners often overlook an important detail: stroke settings. So select your rectangle again and turn on stroke in the right panel here. Increase the thickness slightly so that the border becomes visible. And that small adjustment adds definition and contrast. So with just a frame, a rectangle, and text, you have already built a basic layout. It's simple, but it is real. And now that you understand how to place and style elements, the next step is learning how to control them with more precision. Most beginners start clicking around randomly just to see what happens, and that's totally cool. And that kind of experimentation is good, but understanding how to control objects properly is what makes your designs feel intentional instead of just accidental. So here's what we're gonna do. Select your rectangle that you just made and then drag it to a different position inside the frame. Now that's easy. Next, resize a rectangle by pulling the corner handles. And if you hold Shift while resizing, the proportions will stay consistent, which prevents the shape from stretching unevenly. You can also rotate it using the curved arrow near the corner. Small adjustments like resizing and rotating help you see how flexible each element is. Precision, however, is what separates a rough layout from a clean one. So select both your text and your rectangle at the same time. And in the top toolbar, use the alignment options to center them. So instead of guessing or trying to eyeball your spacing, Figma just snaps everything into place for you. If you use the distribution tools, you can space elements evenly with a single click. And this is how structured layouts are created efficiently. So once everything is aligned, group the elements together. Select both, press Command or Control+G, and they will now move as a single unit. You can ungroup them at any time, but grouping related elements does keep your file organized and easier to manage. So in just a few minutes, you've now built and adjusted a real layout. You've moved around elements, you've resized them, we've aligned them precisely, and we organized them into groups. So there's been no complicated theory here and no overwhelming steps, right? So now what you have seen so far is only the foundation. The features that truly make Figma powerful are coming up next, and this is where the workflow starts to level up pretty quickly. As projects grow, small inefficiencies do start to add up. Changing the same button over and over again across multiple screens quickly becomes frustrating. And that is exactly the problem components are designed to solve. So imagine that you've built a button and used it in 30 different places. If you decide to change its color, its padding, or the font, updating each one manually would be such a pain. So components eliminate that repetition. A component is simply a reusable element. You change it once and every instance of it updates automatically. So select your rectangle and text together, right-click and choose Create Component. And with that, you now have a reusable element. So try duplicating it several times across your frame, then go back to the original component and say change its color. And you will see every duplicate update instantly. And that is leverage, because instead of editing many elements, you can just now edit one source of truth. But components become even more powerful when you introduce variants. Consider a button with different states: primary, secondary, and disabled. Without variants, you would likely create 3 separate components. Now, with variants, you create one component that contains multiple styles inside of it. Add a variant property to your component, and then define the different states. So now you can switch between those styles instantly from the Properties panel. And this is how design systems are structured in real product teams. Large companies rely on this approach every day because it keeps interfaces consistent and scalable. So let's open the Assets panel here, and you're going to see your components stored in a library. And you can drag them into any design file and then reuse them anywhere. So when you switch a variant on one instance, it only affects that specific instance. However, if you edit the main component itself, then of course every instance updates. And that balance between flexibility and consistency is what makes variants so powerful. They're reusable, they're consistent, and efficient. Now, one thing I do want you to keep in mind is that, well, if components and variants are not organized properly, scaling a project will be chaotic. So clear naming and structure matter even more as your system grows. And once you understand structure at this level, the next step is making entire layouts behave intelligently. Because scaling does not stop at components, it extends to how everything moves and resizes all automatically. As soon as your designs start becoming more complex, spacing becomes harder to manage. Like, you move one element and something else shifts slightly out of place. You change text and then suddenly the layout feels uneven. And this is where auto layout makes a massive difference. So auto layout allows your designs to adjust themselves instead of relying on manual positioning. So we can select your button and click auto layout in the right panel. And immediately you can see the structure will be applied to that element. Look at the padding settings on the right, and you can adjust the spacing around the text inside the button, and the button will automatically grow or shrink to fit the content. If you change, say, the length of the text, the button resizes accordingly. And that behavior is responsive by default. So you're no longer resizing shapes manually every single time that something changes. And if you have multiple items inside an auto layout frame, well, now you can control the spacing between them. So set a specific spacing value and Figma will maintain that consistency automatically. There's no need to nudge elements pixel by pixel. And the layout stays balanced because the structure is defined. So this is how dashboards scale, and this is how real applications behave. Elements respond to content instead of breaking when something changes. However, auto layout alone is not enough when you start working with entire screens, because resizing a full frame can still shift elements in unexpected ways if constraints are not set properly. And that is exactly what we need to look at next. Now that your elements are structured with auto layout, it's now time to see how they behave when the entire screen changes. So try resizing your frame so that it becomes wider. And you're gonna probably notice that some elements here stretch or shift in ways that don't look too right. And that happens because constraints have not yet been defined. Figma doesn't know automatically how each object should react when the screen size changes. So you have to define those rules. Select an object and look at the right properties panel. You're gonna see a section labeled constraints. If you set the constraint to left, the object will stay anchored to the left side of the frame as the screen grows or shrinks. And if you set another object to right and resize the frame again, you will see it remain attached to the right edge. So try setting an element to center this time, and it will stay perfectly centered as the layout adjusts. This is how layouts adapt properly across different screen sizes, whether you're designing for desktop, tablet, or mobile. So instead of manually repositioning elements for every size, you define behavior once and then let the system handle the rest. And right now, you are controlling structure, scalability, and consistency across your design. And yet, in 2026, responsive structure is only really part of the story, because Figma now includes AI, and that changes how designs can begin. So everything we've done so far has been very hands-on. You placed elements manually, we structured layouts carefully, and we defined how screens should behave. But in 2026, Figma adds something that changes how a project can even begin. Figma Make introduces a different starting point. Instead of dragging every element onto the canvas all by yourself, you can just describe what you want in plain language. So just type out a prompt and Figma builds the initial layout for you. And it is essentially prompt to layout built directly into your design tool. So for example, you could type create a simple task app layout and then click generate. And within seconds, Figma will produce a structured interface with a header, an input field, a task list, and action buttons. Now, it's not meant to be perfect, and it is not meant to be the final product, but it will give you a real starting structure immediately. And you can try something more specific too, such as create a pricing page with 3 plans. And after that, you're gonna see sections appear with pricing cards, headings, and aligned buttons. So the layout is already organized. And from there, you can refine typography, you can adjust spacing, you can change colors, and improve hierarchy just like you would with any other design. So this isn't magic, it's acceleration. Think about it that way. AI tools like this are often estimated to reduce early design time by 30 to 50%. And the exact number depends on the complexity of the project, of course, but the difference in speed is noticeable. So instead of staring at a blank canvas, you can just begin with a structured draft that you can shape and improve. AI does not replace skill, it removes the fear of starting. So it gives you momentum while you remain in control of the creative decisions. Layout generation is only one part of Figma's AI capabilities. The more subtle features are often the ones that make the biggest difference in real projects. Figma's AI can suggest layout improvements, adjust spacing, and recommend better alignment. Now, these suggestions may seem small, but over time, they do help clean up inconsistencies that are easy to overlook. So instead of manually checking every single gap and margin, you just get intelligent guidance built into your workflow. You can also experiment with smart selection and refinement. So for example, if you select multiple messy layers and ask AI to organize or improve visibility, it can restructure them in a clearer way. In larger files with dozens or hundreds of elements, that kind of assistance can save hours of manual cleanup. Now, one of the most powerful features here is automated design system creation. You can upload a few foundational styles, say such as a color palette, some typography choices, and button styles. So in this example, I uploaded the color palette I wanted for my app, and I asked the AI to apply it across the design. And within moments, the interface reflected the new palette consistently. And behind the scenes, AI suggests reusable tokens, design variables, and structured system elements. So this is the type of workflow support commonly used by product teams that rely on consistent design systems across large projects. However, there is an important detail to keep in mind here. AI does speed up execution, but it does not replace thinking. You still have to define hierarchy, clarity, and structure. Strong fundamentals will always matter more than automation. And once your designs are structured and accelerated by AI, the next step is collaboration. Because modern product design today is rarely a solo process. Designing alone can work for small projects, but modern products are rarely built by one person. Teams just move faster when everyone can see and edit the same work at the same time. So Figma is built for live collaboration. Multiple people can work inside the same file all simultaneously. There is no exporting, no sending updated drafts back and forth, and no confusion about which version is the latest one. So to invite someone, just click the share button here, enter their email address, and choose their permission level. You can set them as a viewer if they only need to look at the file, or as an editor if they need to make changes. And once invited, they appear instantly inside the document. So you can even see their cursor moving around in real time too. So that visibility changes how teams communicate because of feedback and edits all happening immediately. And speaking of feedback, let's go ahead and look at some comments. Figma Make currently does not support comments, so we're gonna switch back to our main Figma design file here. Click the comment icon, then click anywhere on the canvas to leave a note. You can tag a teammate directly and they will receive a notification. So instead of long email threads or annotated screenshots, all feedback lives inside the design file itself. Conversations stay connected to the actual elements being discussed. And apart from that, there is also a built-in safety net: version history. So click on the file name here at the top and open version history. And from there, you can review previous versions of your design and restore older states if needed. This feature prevents major setbacks if something breaks or changes unexpectedly. And yes, that happens more often than people expect or want. So collaboration doesn't end with editing and comments only. Eventually, designs need to be handed off to developers. And that is where the next stage of the workflow becomes important. But by now, you know how to design, how to structure and scale and collaborate inside of Figma. We're not finished yet, because Figma isn't limited to just static screens. It allows you to bring your designs to life. And that changes everything. Static designs show how something looks, yes. Prototypes show how it works, okay. And when you're presenting an idea, movement makes it easier for people to understand flow and interaction. So instead of just explaining what should happen, you can actually demonstrate it. All right, so click the prototype tab here in the right panel. And then from here, select an element and define an interaction. Choose the trigger that you want, such as on click, and then select the action, like say navigating to another frame. You can also adjust the animation and the transition style. And with just a few connections, your design will definitely be interactive. Buttons respond, screens transition, and the experience just feels real. And once you can prototype interactions, the next step is thinking through ideas before they become polished designs. And that is where FigJam comes in. FigJam is not built for polished user interfaces. It's built for thinking, because when ideas are still messy and unstructured, FigJam gives you a flexible space to explore them. It works like a digital whiteboard where you can add sticky notes, you can sketch flows, and you can map out concepts quickly. So open up a FigJam board and start dropping in sticky notes. You can invite teammates to join in too and brainstorm live and move ideas around freely. There is no pressure to make everything look perfect here. The goal is clarity, not visual polish. Figma also provides templates for common planning sessions, including user journeys, product roadmaps, and sprint planning boards. So these kinds of templates help structure discussions without slowing creativity. And this kind of flexibility saves time early in a project because it allows team to align before detailed design begins. But once the ideas are clear and structured, you may need to present them in a more formal way. And that is when we switch gears. Figma is not limited to designing interfaces and prototypes. It also allows you to create full presentations directly inside the platform. To begin, create a slides file. The experience will feel similar because you are using these same design tools that you've already learned. You can add text, you can insert images, place shapes, and structure each slide using frames and layout controls. So when your presentation is ready, you can present it instantly within Figma. There's no need to export your work to another tool or rebuild the slides elsewhere. Your designs and your presentation remain connected, which makes updates and collaboration much more efficient. So this approach keeps your workflow streamlined. Now, instead of switching between multiple platforms for design and then presentation, everything just lives in one place. And at this point, you can design interfaces, you can build interactive prototypes, you can brainstorm ideas, and then present them clearly. So there is one final piece that makes improvement faster and more accessible: the community. Because learning in isolation slows progress, and the next section opens up an entirely new level of support and inspiration. So one thing you should know about Figma is that you don't have to start from scratch every single time. If you open up the community tab here, you're gonna see thousands and thousands of files shared by other designers. There are templates, UI kits, full app layouts, landing pages, dashboard, pretty much anything you can think of. So if you search for something, say like dashboard template, you can just duplicate one straight into your drafts and then use it as a starting point. So that alone can save us hours, especially when you're still learning structure. And then there are plugins. So open up the resources panel here and browse through them. You're gonna find plugins for everything: icons, stock images, color palettes, accessibility checks, and a whole lot more. And most of them install in just one click and instantly expand what you can already do inside of Figma. Instead of leaving the platforms to, grab assets or test contrast somewhere else, no, you can just handle it all right here. UI kits are also a big deal. There are official material design kits and iOS kits available in the community. And these follow real platform standards for spacing, typography, and components. And using them helps you design things that feel accurate and professional without any guesswork on measurements. So the key is this: use what's already available. Don't rebuild everything from zero just to prove that you can. Smart designers reuse systems and focus their energy where it matters. So at this point, you know how to design, you know how to structure layouts, you know how to use components, auto layout, AI, collaboration, and resources. So now let's bring it all together. Just keep in mind that this isn't just a tour of features, but more about showing you that Figma is not actually that complicated once you understand how it all fits together. All right, so a few minutes ago, Figma might have looked confusing, but now you know exactly what's going on here. The interface is no longer random, the tools have a purpose, and the workflow just connects in a way that actually makes sense. But the only way to really get comfortable from here is to just keep using it. So open up a new file and build something small, recreate a simple layout, redesign an app screen that you like, or experiment with a landing page. Progress comes from repetition and familiarity, not from watching more tutorials. So let me know, please, down in the comments below what you want to learn next, and I'll see you at the next one.